So I'm going to do the crazy thing here and ask some heavy philosophical questions, which you've heard before because they've all been in the news the last umpteen years. We keep asking the question, but you read a lot about it, particularly in the UK at the moment, but also in the US. Um, and effectively the question is, do we live in a democratic country or not? In a democratic region, democratic society or not? So I was sitting out front on Sunday morning, I think it was, with a cup of coffee, enjoying the last of the summer sun, if it's summer sun we've got at the moment. It was early Sunday morning, and a van pulls up out front with the side door open. It's not driving, it hasn't been driving very quickly, I assume. And as a chap jumps out with a sign, runs across the street, plants it in my neighbor's front lawn, and they drive off. And I get up and I go, look, oh, it's a conservative sign. Right, okay. Conservative sign. We've got an election on here, federal election on here in Canada. And there's going to be an election in the UK sometime in the next few months, I'm guessing. And of course, in the US, there's another election a year away. But here in Canada, the federal one has just kicked off. And I thought, oh, okay, the Conservatives are out in force in this particular riding. Interesting. What's the guy's name? Oh, okay. And yesterday morning, I went and Googled his name. I thought I should probably learn a bit about him. I've only been in this riding just a little over a year. So I've only been in Canada for just over a year, so I'm really quite out of the loop on Canadian politics. I better get up to speed. And I Google his name. Oh, lo and behold, there's a sordid story behind this guy. Not sordid, but he hasn't done anything sordid, I hope. But it turns out he's been the candidate in this riding before. He ran for the Liberal Party 2 elections ago, lost. I don't know what the margin was. Apparently he polled pretty well. But he was the Liberal Party candidate in this riding. And this riding generally returns Liberal MPs. But 2 elections ago, he ran for the Liberals and lost. And then last election, he tried to run again, only to have the Prime Minister here, Justin Trudeau, revoke his or prevent him. Basically, the top brass in the Liberal Party can yay or nay anybody running in any particular riding if they decide they don't like him or her. And this guy, his candidacy was initially approved and then suddenly revoked. Why? Because they found a star candidate that they wanted in. They figured this guy running for the Liberals was a shoe, and that was one more guy they could count on to win. And they decided to parachute him into this riding and told the previous candidate, who'd already run before, like I said, 2 elections ago, he'd run before and not lost by much. And so this guy was turfed out, and this retired general came in and won the election in this riding. Interestingly, he's retiring after only 1 term. I'm not sure what his reasons are. They usually trot the thing out, it's time to do something else, time to spend more time with the family, quote unquote. So, but I've also heard mutterings that he was expecting a cabinet post, didn't get one, and didn't like the fact that Team Trudeau, as it's called, which is basically the Prime Minister and a tight-knit group of close advisors, none of whom were elected, are basically calling the shots both within the Liberal Party and in the actual business of government. And he's fed up and says that's not what I signed up for, and so he's leaving. He probably, I don't know if that's true or not, but At any rate, the guy who'd run 2 elections ago, lost, tried to run it last election, was prevented from doing so. He's jumped ship to the Conservatives, and that's the guy who is out campaigning very early in this election. But the whole thing stinks to high heaven in this riding. And it just made me, it sort of brought it home to me. Wow, we've all heard stories like this before. The people at the top decide, the tight-knit elite at the top says, right, we the elite think that you, the people, need to appoint and elect the people we say because we know what's best for you better than you do. And that, we're hearing stories like that all the time. The fact that it just so happens to be happening in my particular riding brought it home to me quite heavily. So I'll ask the question that I asked at the beginning of this video. Do we live in a democratic country? Do we live in a free country? What is democracy, after all? Good question. Oxford American Dictionary. Democracy. I don't know how this is going to go, by the way. I'm thinking off the top of my head for the most part. I've got a few notes written down here, but I never entirely know how this is going to go when I record these things. Right, democracy. Government by the whole people of a country, especially through representatives whom they elect. Well, that's pretty loose, pretty vague. There's a lot that can happen within those confines. You could define a lot of countries as democracies by that standard, and it still wouldn't actually be what feels. It might satisfy that definition of democracy, but does it feel free for you and me? Don't know. I mean, in the UK right now, almost every other day there's an article in there, one politician or group of politicians accusing another group of politicians of being undemocratic and basically violating the principles of democracy. Well, what are the principles of democracy? The next day, the other side will accuse the first side of being undemocratic. I suppose, and I'll throw this one out, democratic country is where you are free to say what you think without retribution. You're free to carry on your own business as long as you're not damaging anybody else. You're free to work where you want. You're free to marry who you want or not marry who you want. That's probably a little bit better. And by that standard, it would certainly appear by the quality of the debate in the UK in a moment that the UK is still a democratic country. Maybe, or is it? It might be democratic, but does it feel free? You got a country right now that is bitterly divided against itself, 50-50. Okay, yeah, 48-52 was the official referendum result, but within the noise, 50-50. You've got a country bitterly divided against itself. In the US, it's reasonable to assume the same thing is there. And in Canada at the moment, there's nothing that is badly and bitterly dividing everybody yet. I think that will come. I hope I'm proved wrong. When you spend your energy arguing, fighting, squabbling with other people, that's energy that you're not spending minding your own business, moving forward, serving other people. That's how you go forward. That's how any group of people goes forward, is serving other people, taking care of the less fortunate, the weaker ones, within your family, taking care of your kids, minding your seniors, making sure they've got what they need, serving other people for money or for the goodness of your own heart. Either way, certainly for money, that matters. But if you're spending all your time arguing and squabbling, that's going to go downhill. So here's my prediction. I think the UK is going to decline. I hate to say it. I really hope I'm wrong. I'm British. I was born there. I'll always feel British. But I think the UK is going to decline and slowly fade into the background. I was on the bus here. It was back in February, I think, and Robin Lustig, who used to be one of the morning commentators on BBC Radio 4 in the morning, I used to hear him all the time. Really good journalist, and he was being interviewed by another journalist on CBC Radio, and he had a really poignant and disturbing comment to make. He said, "The UK used to be known in the world as the reasonable, thoughtful adult in the room. You could consult the UK, for the most part, on anything, or call the UK to get involved in something, and you could expect the adult in the room, the rational adult in the room, to behave and take charge. Not anymore. That's sad. And I really hope it turns around. I'm not optimistic at the moment. No matter which way the political events unfold in October, as we approach October 31st, unless one side in this debate decides to fade quietly away and return to the business of doing business, taking care of each other, the British economy is just going to decline. You can't spend your time and energy both fighting and doing business at the same time. It doesn't work. You've only got a finite amount of energy in any one given day, in any one given life. So unless one side decides to accept defeat quietly and admit that they've lost and let's move on, UK is going to decline. The way things are looking at the moment, I don't think that's going to happen. Like I said, I really hope I'm wrong. I think the US is going to decline for much the same reason, only the details. At the moment, the issue there is obviously Trump rather than Brexit, but I think the US is gradually going to decline as well. And Canada will go with it. Wherever the US goes, Canada goes. Any region, any country that spends its energy fighting, spends its energy and time and attention fighting and arguing, just doesn't do well. I think I mentioned a few videos ago about this documentary on Netflix, and I keep talking about documentaries on Netflix. That's because I keep watching them. It's called The Great Fire, and it was actually about the Great Fire of London, and really interesting observation made in there about when the fire broke out and started spreading. A lot of the common people, rather than trying to fight the fire and work together to fight the fire, looked for someone to blame. They immediately degenerated into fighting. And I was going to say as a result, the fire raged for 3 days. Now, whether it's because they spent their time fighting rather than fighting the fire, I don't know. That's maybe a bit of a far stretch. Okay, sorry, that's a bit of a downer. But think about it. Do you live in a free country? Do you feel free? What can we do about it? Enough said for today.